معرفة.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Again, let us quickly come up with different parties. So for example, here we have the investors. This is of course the cash of the investors, and this cash is going to the SPV. The SPV is dealing with the company, right? So this is the company which wants to raise funds through a Sukuk Al Murabaha. Now, as we have discussed earlier, Murabaha is a trust sale, wherein the seller would clearly tell the purchaser the amount of profit which the seller is making on the transaction. And currently, by practice, generally or mostly, we have seen that Murabaha is done through a deferred sale concept, wherein the payment is generally deferred. So in a Murabaha, what happens? For example, if the company requires 100 million and the company wants to raise 100 million. So what happens is that, for example, 100 million are coming from the investors. The 100 million reaches the SPV. The SPV uses this 100 million, for example, to purchase certain commodities. So these are certain commodities, okay, which are purchased from a broker. So for example, what the SPV does is that the SPV purchases certain Sharia compliant commodities from the broker. So for example, if the SPV purchases 100 million worth of Sharia compliant commodities, and then the SPV will sell these commodities to the company, right? So for example, if the SPV has purchased 100 million worth of certain identified, qualified, Sharia compliant commodities from a broker, and then, so if they have purchased 100 million worth of commodities, and then they have sold that 100 million worth of commodities at $105 million, for example. So $5 million is the profit which will be shared with the investors, and the company has to pay back 105 over a period of time, for example, 5 years. But as the company does not require the commodities, what the company would do is that the company would sell, right, these commodities to another broker in the market. So what we have understood is that, number one, the proceeds from the investors reach the SPV. The SPV purchases certain Sharia compliant commodities from a broker or from the market, and these Sharia compliant commodities are then sold to the company, okay, for $105 to be paid in 5 years. And the company is now obligated to pay $105 to the SPV. So the profit for the investors is the extra $5 million in the transaction. And then the company, because it doesn't require the commodities but it requires cash, so the company sells the commodities in the market again to a different broker, not the same broker but a different broker, and then the company gets the liquidity. Now this is in brief a Murabaha Sukuk. Now of course this asset can vary. This asset could be, for example, in some jurisdictions metals are used, in some jurisdiction palm oil is used, in some jurisdictions, for example, construction material is used. So that is irrespective of region, irrespective of market, irrespective of customs, irrespective of usage. But the principle here is that this should be a Sharia compliant commodity which could be qualified, quantified, and has a value, and which should be able to be which should have the ability to get transferred. But one important feature which we have to keep in mind, according to IOFI, Accounting and Auditing Organization of Islamic Financial Institutions, which is a very important body, according to IOFI, a Murabaha Sukuk is non-tradable. What it means is that, now you see the Sukuk which is given to the, for example, if this is a Sukuk, okay, which is issued to the investors. Now this Sukuk, what is the underlining asset in this Sukuk? Is that the underlining in this Sukuk is the obligation of the company to pay to the SPV. because there is no asset, right? Because what we have discussed is that this asset will be purchased by the SPV and this asset will be sold to the company, and generally this company will again on sell this asset. So there is no asset in the transaction now. So the underlining of the sukuk is nothing but an obligation. So the underlining is a receivable, the obligation of the company to pay back the debt, which is 105 to the SPV. So if the underlining is a debt or a receivable, then this debt or a receivable according to Sharia can only be transferred on par. So for example, if this investor wants to sell the sukuk, now he can only sell the sukuk at the par price. He cannot sell the sukuk at a discount or at a premium. And if he sells it at a discount or a premium, then the difference is nothing but riba or interest. This is a very important point which we have to keep in mind, that in a Sukuk Al Murabaha, the sukuk according to IOFI, okay, AOIFI, and by major scholars throughout the world who subscribe to this principle, is that Murabaha sukuk should not be tradable. So only in case if there are investors for private placement and they are willing to not trade the sukuk, in such conditions a Sukuk Al Murabaha can be structured. But in conditions where we want to list the sukuk and there is an active trading of the sukuk in the secondary market, then Sukuk Al Murabaha is not the right choice and for structuring a sukuk. I just would like to highlight some jurisdictions, some scholars allow the trading in Sukuk Al Murabaha, but majority scholars and the recognized institution like IOFI do not allow Sukuk Al Murabaha to be traded, and they consider the trading of Sukuk Al Murabaha at discount or premium to be non-Sharia compliant.